I have a problem. I am addicted to Arknights Endfield. Mind you, I have never played the original Arknights before despite having heard of it. As someone who enjoys the story aspect of a game, I have heard positive comments about the storytelling. So when the opportunity came for me to try out Arknights Endfield, I was more than excited to do so. See what the fuss was all about, you know? Arknights Endfield stands as a sequel to the original Arknights game. As a game that precedes another, it is natural for it to have borrowed terminologies from the original game. At first, I thought that would make it a challenge to follow the story, given my non-existent experience with the original game. Now, having completed the main story in version 1.0, I am happy to report that that is not the case at all. Arknights Endfield was able to explain the status quo in a straightforward manner, bringing everyone, be it longtime players of Arknights or newbies like me, up to speed. And now I'm going to share with you my first impression of the game, what I've understood of the story, which is going to take up the biggest portion of this video because that's what we do around here, and what I think of the gameplay, so you'll know what to expect if you want to try it out for yourself. What I won't be talking about are the combat mechanic and the gacha system. If that is what you're looking for, this is not the video for you. There are other content creators out there whom I believe are more knowledgeable and have covered these topics. Now, for you who are curious of the story, sit tight because we're taking off to Talos-II right now. The premise of the story as we begin the journey can be summarized in one sentence. Restore the civilization on Talos-II with originium-powered technology developed by Endfield Industries. A simple sentence that carries a lot of questions with it. The first and most important of all is, what happened to the civilization that it needs restoration? To answer that, we need to go back 152 years. This was the time when a pioneering group from Terra arrived on Talos-II. Older generation of Talosians would remember Terra as their homeworld, the planet where the original Arknights take place. Back then, they discovered two non-functional gates at both the northern and southern sides of the planet. After restoring the last damaged one in the north, they eventually found out that it was a portal to another world. What awaited them on the other side was Talos-II, one of the moons orbiting a planet called Talos. This portal, the Cosmic Gate, they call it, was something that they didn't want to meddle with too much, given the terrible state of the ones they found on Terra. So when they exit the gate, arriving on the northern pole of Talos-II, they made sure not to make any modifications to the gate. That also means that they never set out to look for any other cosmic gates that might exist on the moon. And of course, having only one exit with no backup plan is never a good idea. After only inhabiting Talos-II for 5 years, their access to the Cosmic Gate was severed, and this marked the beginning of the First Angeloi War. This was a war fought between humanity and monsters called Angeloi. Within just the first 24 hours of their emergence, the Angeloi overwhelmed and destroyed the cities around the Cosmic Gate, eventually seizing control of the entire region, forcing humanity to move south. 6 years into the war, humanity finally managed to fight back, slowly regaining control over the southern region. 4 years later, the Angeloi activities in the south were finally contained. Many regarded this period, 15 years since the pioneers set foot on Talos-II, as the end of the First Angeloi War. Some others saw the establishment of the civilization band in year 17 as the conclusion of the war. Since then, the effort to rebuild the civilization began. Now, up to this point, I think we're clear on the first half of the story premise. We are restoring the civilization that was ravaged by the Angeloi War 150 years prior on Talos-II, an inhabitable moon that lies on the other side of one of Terra's cosmic gates. This mission is a joint effort between factions within the civilization band, among which is Endfield Industries. There are other important factions in the band, but I will not get into them now for simplicity's sake. We'll explore more of them in the future. Now, Endfield Industries are led by the character we will be playing as, the Administrator, or Endmin for short. Endmin is a prominent figure in the history of Talos-II. They were there since the pioneering years, helping the resistance against Angeloi in the First Angeloi War. Their guidance allowed Endfield Industries to build Dijang, a space station that orbits Talos-II. After humanity's loss of the Cosmic Gate in the north, they were the one who entrusted the Endfield Industries with the mission to reboot life on Talos-II, a mission known as Zeroth Directive. So knowing their important role, it is a given that everybody knows them, or at least knows their name. which the story makes sure we're aware of, by the way, because every time Endmin introduce themselves as the administrator or their companions do so in their stead, the people being introduced to them would say something along the lines of,
Endministrator? Are we talking about the Endministrator?
That's you? By Talos! The rumors are true! By Talos! I never realized that.
This happens a lot throughout the story that at one point, Endmin pointed out to the next person who had that reaction. Now, you might be wondering, if they are so famous, why do people only recognize them after they introduce themselves? Well, it is because Endmin hibernates. They do this every several years, although the purpose is not clear yet. Their latest awakening this time is after a 10-year hibernation, which is why most of the current Enfielders and the UWST crew they meet in the first region only know them by name. These awakenings also seem to take a toll on their health. A telltale sign of that is Endmin waking up with memory loss this time around. Yes, another amnesiac main character. Yes, it is an overused plot by this point, an excuse so that the game can explain every little detail to us the players without it sounding like exposition dumping, but what I like about Enfield's use of it is how straightforward it is. Perlica, a supervisor of Endfield Industries, who is also in charge of monitoring Endmin's health, wastes no time in getting us up to speed. We learn who Endmin is, what the Endfield Industries is, and what they're doing on Talos-II from the prologue of the story alone. Perlica tells us what we need to know when we need to know it. After all, exposition is only bad when it is done for the sake of infodumping alone. Exposition done at the right bit of the story is simply storytelling. In my opinion, that is how Enfield storytelling has been so far. Speaking of natural, I also like that there's no long pause in between sentences spoken by the characters. You know what I'm talking about, right? Those pauses that sometimes can be a bit too long, you have to manually click so that the character would continue talking. That is non-existent in Enfield, making the flow of the dialogue more natural. I don't know, maybe I just haven't played that many gacha games, but this is a breath of fresh air to me. There's also these little interactions between the characters when you explore the world with them. Whichever characters you put in your team will walk around with you in the overworld, like all three of them on top of the one you're currently controlling. And they're not there just for the heck of it, they actually have interaction with the world too. Like for example, when you're standing still for a bit, they will start conversing with each other, and the topics are related to them. With Chen, for example, Endmin will ask her about the Wuling swordsmanship because she spent a year in Wuling City. If it is Chen who starts the conversation, she will talk about Endmin's unique fighting style, then turns to Perlica and asks her if she's seen something like that before.
I'm really curious how the Endmen fought at full power. Perlica, have you seen that before?
I did not. But I found records of important battles fought by our Endmen. They gave rise to quite a few stories.
Or when you start gathering resources that require attacking things, they will help you attack those things and then pick up the drops. And don't worry about missing items from chests you open, they will help you pick those up too. Isn't that cool? I think that's very cool. Now, despite how direct the story has been, there is a sense of foreboding that comes with it. See, Perlica tells us everything, right? The problem is, she tells us everything that she knows. At one point of the story, she shares with us her frustration, admitting that there are times when she questions if she's actually doing the right thing to serve their mission. The only one who knows the complete detail of the Zeroth Directive mission is Endmin, the Endmin before their recent awakening. What Perlica knows and has been telling us might not be the whole truth. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think there is more to Endmin's memory loss than a simple side effect of the hibernation. When Perlica learned that Endmin didn't remember anything, this was what she said.
But for someone like you, this fresh new beginning might just work out.
I mean, excuse me? For someone like Endmin? For someone like who, exactly? The only one who knows all the details of their mission is Endmin. Yet somehow, their memory loss is a good thing? And my suspicion doesn't just stop there. Introducing the Minstone End that Enfield is pursuing, the Originium. Originium is mineral that powers all the machineries that Enfield Industries produce and use. It is also the basis of their elemental manipulation, Originium arts they call it. This mineral originates from Terra, where it is known to be something that is left behind at the site of a natural disaster. One of Terra's first Originium fragments was brought to Talos-II by the pioneers and planted in a new world, hoping that it would kickstart their civilization, a taste of home brought to a foreign land. The thing with Originium is that due to its high internal energy, when that energy is completely expended, it does not simply combust. Instead, it breaks down into fine particle dust. Originium activation, they call it. And this activated state of Originium carries the risk of oropathy, a disease that will gradually harden the body of the infected. This disease can be suppressed with a suppressant that they have developed, but can never be cured. This is specifically mentioned in the archive, justifying that mining Originium is something that is still worth pursuing because the risk has been effectively contained. However, it can only be contained within Talos-II's controlled environments, meaning those without proper gears or lack of safety precautions are still at risk of being exposed to this illness. Endmin came across one such case during their mission, a child with rocks forming on her arm, and started questioning the ethical nature of their usage of Originium. And you know what Perlica said to that?
Don't stress over it, Endman.
Seriously, a child was dying because of the mineral that they freely mined and used 24/7, and that was not a big deal? Endmin should not worry about that? Is this why she said that Endmin losing their memory was a good thing? That way, Endmin can be steered to whichever direction they want Endmin to face and swing their sword at? Very, very curious. So while the story does seem straightforward, I feel like there's definitely something more to it than meets the eye, and I am curious to find out more. And that about sums up the premise of the story and what I understand of the plot so far. Before we move on to the gameplay aspect, I would like to point out one more thing that I really like from the story bit. In the English dub specifically, they allow the characters to have different accents. Sometimes they even slipped into their mother tongue. More often than not, it is when they're cursing because aren't we the most fluent at that in our native language? This variation makes the world feel richer, showing that there are indeed different groups of people inhabiting the moon. As someone who have an accent myself, seeing accents being embraced as it should be, instead of being mocked at, something that one must get rid of so that they could fit in somewhere, it makes me feel seen. I love that. Now, the gameplay is something that I have a love-hate relationship with. More hate in the beginning, a lot of love towards the end. At its core, the gameplay is the realization of the Zeroth Directive mission. We establish our hub base in different cities, first Valley 4 and then Wuling, and alongside it, we set up automated factories to produce goods that we can trade with the locals. A simple concept that is filled with quite a lot of hand-holding tutorials baked into the main story. Yes, you heard it right. The early factory functionality tutorials are part of the main story, especially the second act of the first chapter. Although it does eventually get pushed to the side mission section, you still have to go through some of the gameplay tutorials in the main story first. And I get why that is the case. These factories produce not only goods to sell to the people, but also necessary materials to craft our equipment, without which fighting more difficult enemies does get tedious, if not more challenging. However, as someone who likes to figure things out myself via trial and error, this part of the quest was tough to go through. Storytelling-wise, it also slows down the urgency of the story. Like here we are, setting up our base, taking in all the necessary factories know-how, and in a distance, the evil mastermind is simply waiting for us, making sure that we have it all figured out before they tear the sky open. How nice of them. Once you get through this part though, the pace does pick up, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. Without the tutorial pestering me at every turn, I ended up enjoying the factory aspect a lot. Too much, I dare say, because every time a new area was unlocked with the story progression, my top priority was to find all the mining spots in the area, lay down my relay towers, and power up the mining rigs to gather more minerals from my factory. I remember arriving at this particular area in Valley 4, where I was supposed to proceed deeper into the enemy's lair and take them down, but that area just so happened to be where sandleaf flowers grew. By that point, I had been looking everywhere for that flower. So what did I do next? I picked up those flowers, ran back to my base, and duplicated them like the fate of everyone in Valley 4 was not dependent on my team defeating the bad guy. Anyway, if you can't tell, this is why I'm addicted to Endfield. I have a tech background and have spent most of my adult life working in tech, building dashboards and optimizing them so that they could run faster without consuming too much resources. So when Enfield offers this side of the game, the ability to tinker with a system, figuring out how each component works and how it can be optimized, I was done for. I have spent hours trying to optimize my production lines. When I think it is already good enough, I will find a little something to tinker with again. A 15-minute let me check how my factory is doing gaming session, I would stretch into 3 hours before I realize it. And if you want to experience that for yourself, want to tinker with the factory and delve into the world of Talos-II, Arknights Endfield is now available for download on Windows, iOS, Android, and PlayStation 5. Go to the official website now, link in the description. Remember, the factory is addicting. You have been warned. And if you enjoyed this lore exploration video, stick around as I will cover more Endfield lore in the future. That is all from me today, and I will see you in Talos-II.